Hello. Hello.
CF on. Yep, I'll get the training started. Cool. Thanks again, everyone, for coming to the biweekly CF on Kubernetes working group forum. We have a number of topics to go over. There is a link in the chat, and we will just get started on the first topic then. So first topic is go vote on a logo.
Yeah, we have
We have a
a
number of options, and we have a poll up, but I think.
yeah, we have
Did you want to elaborate on this?
we have 8 logo options plus 5 logo type options, and then we'll vote. We need to vote on both, and then the combination of the two will win. And we already have like 18 votes, so that's already almost twice as many as we got for the name. But I guess the more the merrier. So I think we want to close it maybe by the end of this week. So I think we can keep it open till Friday afternoon. Do you think we should like establish like a very strict deadline? Because technically, yeah, I mean, I like to close it on either we close it on Friday end of day, like midnight basically, and then I get the numbers out on Monday, or I take some hours at the end of Friday. What do you think?
Yeah, I think Friday is a fine deadline. Because
I could say Friday, my lunch break as the deadline, and then in the afternoon I crunch numbers, if you see what I mean. And we have the logo by Friday, end of my day.
Yeah.
Otherwise, I'll just push everything back a little bit. Okay, let's do that.
Yeah,
I mean, we already have 18 votes. There's no
Yeah,
need.
I think
And
that's
half a day is not going to make a difference. So I'm going to post a message saying that deadline is whatever the UTC is for my lunch break.
cool. Sounds good. Yeah, it'll be interesting to see what shakes out of that. But
Yeah, of course, given a sneak peek at the data, but I won't say anything.
yeah,
And also, the whole ranking system means it's not super obvious to tell just by looking at the votes. I mean, you can see, you know, some are definitely more liked than others, but the beauty of the system is that it's in the end it's a compromise, right? So
Yep.
We'll see what comes out.
cool. Awesome. Well, regardless, it's going to be exciting that we finally have some traction on this. So
Yeah, and we have a README story. So hopefully once the logo is ready, we can pick that one up and have a README with a logo and some useful information in it. And that's going to be another step towards the release. I think at this point, we're very close.
cool. Let's see. Next topic.
Speaking of voting, I did manage to get a copy of the Electo project up and running on Cloud Foundry, although I didn't try on Karifi yet with the Python build pack. So that could be useful in the future, especially if we have a community-wide one that people.
I looked at the thing. I don't remember what system they use, because what I really geeked out on is like the different systems of ranked voting, etc. In the end, I chose 2 just to compare them, and they always yield the same results, which I guess is good. But I'd be curious to see which one it uses.
I mean, it's the same one we used with that Cornell system last year with Condorcet rankings.
Okay, I'll check it out. Yeah, I mean, do remember looking at the project. It's a Python web app. Okay.
Yeah, Kubernetes and Hnc Native, they've been using it for their various selections.
Nice. Yeah, it says it's for CNCF. Very nice.
Cool. Doing it the native way.
Exactly. The way it's supposed to be done.
Yep. Cool. So next up we have is the rename done, which has a linked GitHub issue.
Yeah, so that story has been sitting for a bit. I think we got stuck because at some point we couldn't decide whether to rename the secrets repository. And then we all agreed we're not going to rename it. So I think Akira closed all the closable that needed to be closed, like for that thing to be called over. I was wondering if there is anything left, because otherwise I'm happy to just press close on it. And that's one fewer story in our 0.1 milestone.
Yeah, I think it's effectively done. As you noted, the one outstanding thing was the sort of Boolean value that the CLI transmits, which it has not been renamed because obviously that then requires a change to the CLI and all that. So I think we can consider it done with the knowledge that that is one of those remaining threads that we need to decide if we want to do anything about it.
All right, because it's called CF on K8s, the flag. I mean, on one hand, we could argue it makes sense for it to be generic, but on the other hand, it's a very specific implementation. So it's not like it would work with anything but Karifi, just because Karifi knows exactly how to handle the headers. But yeah, maybe it's not worth a breaking change, because then people will have configs around. I mean, it's just us really.
Yeah, like we kind of talked about it a few weeks ago too and decided not to do anything with it. And if we truly wanted to in the future, like you can just support both for a while and migrate people over, but it's like doesn't matter.
That's probably the best thing to do. Okay, yeah, I mean, who cares? It's pretty much invisible. No one is ever supposed to edit that file.
Yeah.
So, okay.
Just like in the past, that's what we did. So like log aggregator and log cache is an example. Like both of those are in there. And then eventually you could like theoretically drop one off, but it's not a huge cost to just add another line to that JSON.
Okay, so I've dragged it into review or approved, and I guess I don't really need to accept this, so I just close it.
Cool.
Boom,
Sounds
gone.
good.
Nice.
Awesome. Continuing down the list, we have nominating Clint as an approver.
Yeah, so it's not here, but we've been waiting for a while for Clint to reach the requirements to be able to be nominated as an approver of the project. And the requirements have actually changed recently to include like a wider range of contributions. And with this new criteria, I checked, and yeah, he qualifies really well. And he's been contributing for like 3 months. So I think it makes sense. I have created the PR. I don't know, like I've added Georgi as the other lead to approve it. I don't know who else needs to approve it. I guess once we have consensus among the leads, we're fine. We don't need anyone else to approve it. So maybe I'll just prod Georgi to approve it next week, and not next week. It's not Friday. To approve it tomorrow, and then we can get it in, and you can finally start pushing code like everyone else.
Cool.
Yeah, I'll be curious
yes.
just logistically on the community repo if we can merge after Georgie gives his approval.
But you mean permission wise, if I can do it myself?
No, I think we need like some other approval on it, but if it's like good enough for him, just with whatever permission scope he has on the community repo right now. So
should I add someone else as a reviewer?
No,
just
I'll pay attention to it as a TOC
Okay,
member if
good.
it just needs like a rubber stamp from someone else to
I'll
merge
ping
it.
you. I was wondering, like, there's no automation in place yet for this stuff. So like once that's in, I will manually add him to the group of approvers by myself. Okay. Good.
Right. We've started discussing setting up automatic generation of the GitHub teams in the Cloud Foundry org from the contents of the working group charter YAML, but it's not done yet. That's kind of the next step in regularizing all of the teams that are in the org.
I had some ideas about it, but it looks like the thing is progressing by itself. So
yeah, feel free to weigh in. I mean,
yeah, but I was like, I had an idea of kickstarting the thing, but it looks like the conversation is already there, so it's good. And then I guess once that happens, we'll yeah, we'll have to deal with existing groups, but yeah, we'll think about it when it's time.
Cool. Yeah, exciting to have people reaching those milestones so we can continue to have a active group of people. So the next topic is task workload proposal.
Yeah, so the context on this is I'm working on the tasks proposal. And the task proposal, I'm proposing that our tasks implementation relies on some underlying abstraction for running like one-off things. And this is so that we don't couple ourselves to any, like to, I don't know, the implementation details of the job resource or whatever, right? Exactly like we do for apps, like we have this intermediate long running process thing. We do the same for tasks. And we are in the middle of proposing the introduction of these new abstractions to replace the Hnc ones for the long running stuff, for the building stuff as well. That proposal does not include anything for one-off stuff. So I wanted to ask the group, what do people think about, like, which of these things should go first? Like, we have different options. We implement tasks using Hnc, and then one day we will introduce this new interface and switch. We can block the tasks epic and have like a new epic for introducing the tasks, or a new proposal to introduce the task workload. Or we can even extend the existing proposal to introduce the task workload abstraction and wait for that to be implemented before we do tasks. Honestly, I'm inclined to just do the first, because that way I think it's easier for us to work like in parallel. It might require some rework once we switch interfaces, but I'm starting to think it's not going to be much anyway. So, and in exchange we get some more agility, like fewer dependencies across different tracks.
Yeah, I think if the cost is relatively low, the rework cost, then that makes sense because you sort of enable that task workload earlier on, and it then maintain some consistency where you have everything implemented with one set of workloads, and then later we can abstract it, and it probably is even somewhat reusable at that point. If we find a sort of more generic interface, then you at least have the groundwork laid and you kind of pull it into somewhere else. But if the cost is high, I think you're a little more familiar with the workings of that. If the cost is high for the rework, then we might want to consider one of the other options. But
yeah, I suspect the cost is going to be low because it's just kind of just a very narrow interface. It's like, you know, when you create a task, it's not like you have many things to specify. Honestly, I don't remember exactly what the Hnc one looks like, but it's probably like an image, a command to run, and that's it.
It should be very similar to LRP. It's the same stuff. It's just it terminates at the end.
Right, mvars, all that kind of stuff. Yeah, it needs to go in probably.
So I think the implementation will look very similar to the process controller.
Yeah, no, the only thing I can think of is like the status enum versus conditions array. Like if we're gonna do some work to translate from a conditions array to a status enum and vice versa, that could all be avoided if we skip the Hnc thing altogether. But maybe it's not that big of a deal. It's like a for loop that goes through an array and figures out what's the most recent condition and use that. Like, it doesn't sound incredible. Maybe I'm just overestimating the problems with that one. So maybe, yeah, we just use Hnc. You're right that it's nice to have everything point to Hnc, and then we can kind of potentially swap the thing all at once, and maybe at least in different releases. So we're going to have a release that just points to Hnc and a release that just is completely decoupled from Hnc. That'd be nice if we can coordinate the epics. That'd be nice.
Yeah, I think it, especially even if we were to wait until we decoupled it, there would still be a certain amount of work to go back and ensure parity with Irene and any other task workload that we want to implement.
Yeah, I'm keen to fill back the European backlog, because now I think we have a bunch of chores, but like we haven't done any feature work in a while. So I'm keen for the team over here in EMEA to start doing some feature work again.
Cool.
Should be a
Yeah, I
bit
think it
more
makes
fun.
sense. Let's go for it. If anyone has any dying desire to or concerns that they want to bring up, then they can either through the next meeting or Slack or whatever. But I think it sounds like a good plan to just move forward on that. Cool. Unless there are more comments on that, we have a remember to review and give feedback on the support interchangeable build and run implementations. There's a document attached for that.
Yeah, so that's the proposal that Matt had put out for the other two abstractions, the build and run workload as they're called in there. I know there has been some more feedback on it and stuff, and so far like there's nothing I've seen that disagrees with the proposal like at its core or anything. And in fact, Matt has started writing stories for the build side of it, because that's also much less like, I don't think any of it's truly controversial, but there's been less like feedback or like anything on that. So I think one thing that would be useful for him would be some more feedback on just what that run interface looks like whether or not we want it to be pod specable, or if we found value in like some of the LRP abstractions that the Irene LRP has. So I think feedback on that interface is something he's looking for. So just sharing this out again.
Yeah, so I added just a comment on the name. Just I think that run workload might be a bit generic, but that's just a detail, I guess. Regarding the interface, pod specable interface versus not, I kind of put my hands forward and I was like, I was telling people check that out because it's see if you like the pod specable thing. But I looked at the proposal and it's not pod specable in the proposal. Like it doesn't have the pod spec in it in the proposal. Does it mean we've already given up on that, or do we want to bring that back and see if people like it or not? Like what would, because my understanding is that there will be pros to that, even though of course it comes with cons, but like maybe if you're not convinced yet, we could bring it back and have two alternative designs and let people discuss on that while it's early.
Yeah, that's a good point. Actually, reminds me, I forgot something there. Yeah, so the CR definitions in it aren't like the end all be all. Matt wanted to actually like start working on the implementation to feel out what worked and didn't work in them before like presenting that part. So yeah, this form of the proposal actually is like, does the concept of this resource feel okay, and like does this make sense what we're doing? But like the concept is independent of like what it actually looks like at the end of the day. You can always massage things further and back and forth and stuff.
Yeah, no, I think we have wide consensus on the fact that it's a good idea to do this thing. Like we've been talking about it for a long time. There might be disagreements like on the specific of the interface definition. I don't know if we want to solve them now via this, or if we want to do it in the future with other proposals or draft PRs or whatever.
Yeah, I think no, that's a good point. I think it's difficult to discuss it without having two discrete things to look at and comment on there.
Yeah, and it's I mean, if we believe both interfaces could come with their own advantages, then it's a shame to kind of bin one just because you assume that people won't like it, and maybe it's not. Maybe I don't know. It's good to just show them both and see what people think, or maybe we can come up with something in between. I don't know.
Cool. Well, that all sounds good. It's good to hear that the core of this is like acceptable and stuff. We'll let Matt know today when he's in.
Cool.
Yeah, and I see you've put your name on it as a person who reviewed it, so that's good.
Mhm.
Yeah, definitely gonna have to take a closer look myself. And if anyone else wants to drop the link in chat. Just make sure everyone has it. Cool. All right. The next topic is, I believe, from Ron, which is, should this document working group be renamed on Slack? I think this comes from the perspective of gaining an actual name for the newest iteration of the project, being Karifi. I can offer my 2 cents immediately, or you can, if there's something specific you wanted to drill towards, you can do that.
No, nothing specific, but go for it.
Okay. I think the feeling was that the CF on Kubernetes working group forum is sort of an umbrella that works on or maintains responsibility for several different projects. And while the newest flavor is the one we're really concentrated on, it's really a forum for anything that is in the Kubernetes space that is Cloud Foundry related. So that would be still like having CF for K8s under the umbrella for any topics people need to bring up, as well as anything else that is adjacent, any like projects like Irene and all that.
Got it.
Anyone
Yeah,
else
we can leave it at that.
have any thoughts that disagree with what I have said?
No,
Yeah, I think it
this-
makes sense.
Yeah, this came up in the TOC discussion earlier today when we were just reviewing PRs on the community repo, and that was the vantage point that I advanced as well, so that we don't want it to just necessarily be scoped to Karifi, but that's the active thing. We might want to rename the Slack channel though. I don't know.
Yeah.
Maybe like just CF Karifi dev.
Yeah.
I guess it would be easier for people to find, I guess, if people look for help on the project, in fact, yeah. But that means we don't have like a working group channel anymore.
I was going to say, do we want a working group channel? Because I see there's a convention for other working groups that they have WG working group name.
Yeah,
Mhm.
I think it would be very redundant for us just because we only ever work on one thing. So like on paper, it makes sense, but in practice, we'll have yet another channel.
Right.
Which one we won't be using. I don't know. Either I don't know. The argument for the Slack channel named after the project is strong because like, yeah, if I were someone who was curious about this and I joined the CF Slack and I'd be looking for Karifi. And at the moment, if you search for Karifi, nothing will pop out. I don't know if there's maybe a way to associate keywords to channels or something, just to make it easy to find. Like we could keep the current name, but at least make it easier to find for people who search for Karifi. I don't know if there is anything like that, like labels or metadata for channels. I don't know. Otherwise, maybe it's worth renaming. And if one day new projects start popping up and the need for a working group channel emerges, then we can create the working group channel. Maybe there's no rush, unless there's like a risk that someone steals the name, but I don't think that's a problem.
I think we could co-opt it in that case. We have some
Exactly.
amount of
We also
privacy.
have the powers, so yeah, maybe yeah, we should rename it. What are the
You're back
consequences?
on making a private channel named that. So
What are the consequences? Like, do we break stuff? Like, I was wondering if maybe there was some automatic redirecting.
I think
Kicking
Slack will even
game.
remember if you renamed a channel and like it'll say this used to be named CF K8s dev or whatever.
I don't know how much automation we have in place that posts on the channel, but those things could break. Although, yeah, I think actually, like computers refer to channels on Slack via IDs. That the
Right.
channel is actually just it's like your Twitter handle. It's actually just a label. The actual ID is a number or something. So maybe it's fine. Yeah, I can take that on to do the rename if everyone agrees. Or do we want, maybe I'll do a quick check on, like I'll post a quick message on the channel first, see if we have, because I don't see many people here, but see if
Yeah,
everyone is
that's
on board,
probably-
and then we do it.
I would do that. That seems like the right thing to do, is post a little message, give people a little bit of time to react and respond, and then we'll go from there.
Okay.
Cool.
Okay.
Next topic, it looks like the install process has some rough edges, perhaps. There's a document linked, which looks like a bunch of steps. What particularly are you seeing, so we can kind of quickly assess how much we can help you right now versus async?
Yeah, I think async would be best, because this might go down a rabbit hole. But by way of background, one of the things that we did with like CF for K8s was to have very specific installation docs, which was very step by step, that pertain to different infrastructure providers, and that made the whole thing slightly more relatable. And this is like an install CF on Kubernetes for dummies kind of approach. So that's one of the things that I was trying to do for Queryfee as well. And the first one that I picked was Google Kubernetes, GKE. I'm stuck at the point where I'm unable to do a CF push. And I think I posted the error message. I got like a bunch of different feedback from different folks. I'm able to install it and log in reliably when I follow these steps, but the push itself isn't working, and that's the only part that's failing. And so I'm going to try and do kind clusters this week, or switch to a different provider this week. But I don't know if it's a problem because I'm using like a wildcard domain provider and things like that. But I imagine if like login works, I guess CF push should work technically, but I don't know. I'm out of options and could use some help. So.
Cool. That sounds good. I can try to run through your little instruction set later and see what I find. Off the top of my head, you need to make sure that you do have the sort of default domain provided to the cluster, and typically that's done by just doing a kubectl apply, but you've probably already done that, so it might be something else. But if you haven't done that, try that and see if it works. But yeah, definitely anyone here that can provide some support. Let's try to make sure we can get this working, because it's definitely important to make sure that the out of the box install process is not painful or difficult. Cool. Just wanted to welcome, we got one more person entering the forum, so welcome. We have a couple more topics to go, so let's keep on rolling. So there is a topic about role binding latency.
Yep. So I've put this on here because it's a problem we're seeing now in the unit tests. It's not really the unit tests, it's the repositories testing against env test. It's strange because in GitHub Actions, you see like every 5 runs or something, it goes and does a random error saying that you don't have permission to do something. So I've been looking at this a bit recently. So from the Kubernetes channel, we found out that we shouldn't make any assumptions about you having a permission once you've created a role binding. There's definitely latency built into Kubernetes, and the API or whatever handles the authorization will need to catch up with what's in etcd. And that's what we seem to be seeing in GitHub Actions. You create a role binding, then you try and do something that requires that role binding, and it says no. Computer says no. And yet, when you run the thing locally, you never seem to see it. So we've worked out how to make it happen locally now. So it turns out removing the race flag from the Ginkgo test enables sort of our side of a testing to run a bit faster. And that allows it to beat Kubernetes a bit. So if you run the repository suite with race turned off, you get 1 or 2 errors every time out of every test run, which is good. And I've been seeing which tests fail. There's total random distribution through the whole lot of them, different verbs, different objects. So it seems like we've got a real problem there that we need to address. So vaguely thinking about 2 ways of doing it. We can go back to the old idea of wrapping our K8s user client to try and automate some exponential back off of retries on if we get a forbidden error. That seems to work pretty well for most cases, apart from our case where we list resources across namespaces. So there we're just picking a whole load of namespaces that have any old role binding in there for the user. And we expect a certain number of forbidden errors, potentially. And we don't want to go and wait like 30 seconds or something like that for each each time we hit one of those. There'll be trouble. Anyway, that's one thing, and we can look at maybe doing something slightly different for listing. And then the other thing is maybe we, when we create the role binding, we do the similar thing that's in the org and space creation at the moment for HNC, and wait until we can do something that involves that role binding. It's a bit more tricky though, because I might have to change every single before each in the test to go and create roles via the repositories rather than just using the K8s client. Anyway, just thought I'd bring that one up for everyone's awareness. Yeah, so previously, I mean, we had eventuallys in the code. I think Danny was particularly keen to get rid of those because they're hiding problems in the real code. And now we've actually seen the problems in the real code, so we'll do something about that.
Yeah, I've definitely seen this as well, and it's a little bit unfortunate that we don't have that guarantee from the Kubernetes side, but there are probably very good reasons for it.
Oh, yeah, another thing. So when we were struggling to reproduce this, we had an idea of doing a sort of chaos monkey thing and introducing artificial latency on the role binding creation. And that's interesting as well. If you do that, and like create role bindings in a Go routine with a sleep beforehand, then you get to run the tests without the role binding being there when it should be there. And then you can fail about 290 out of the 300 repositories tests. So I think that's the list of all the ones that are vulnerable to it. All the ones we have to look at. Yeah.
It's a significant number of them. Yeah.
All the ones that expect it to work correctly.
Yep. Well, I wish I had a magical solution right now, but yeah, this will probably take some thinking and sort of massaging. Any other comments on that before we move forward? Looks like nope. Okay, cool. Then the next fun topic is the Hnc Explorer.
Yeah, so I was just looking at what's on the top of the US backlog. I saw it was Explorer to go and replace HNC and see if that's feasible. I just want to make sure we're doing it for the right reasons, because it has like 3 things in there saying, 1, the webhooks look at every single resource in Kubernetes, and that's a security issue and causes problems. I think 2 was it was a latency thing, wasn't it? We have to do hacks to make sure the role binding exists before we carry on. And then the 3rd one was service account propagation doesn't work. So I noticed that the first one with the webhooks looking at every single resource, I think that's just our configuration. I suppose it's maybe a symptom that it's just coming out of beta and the 1.0 has only just happened. I mean, their design is that you can decide what objects, what resources will be propagated at runtime by modifying a configuration, and it will reload it and then start propagating those. And for that to work, the webhook has to go and listen on all the resources. And we can just not configure it like that. I mean, I switched the configuration locally and it works fine if you only listen to role bindings and secrets. And it also restricts the namespaces it's looking at. So I think that answers those security questions. And then the latency thing, I was thinking, yeah, it's a longer latency for HNC. So when you get a very big, busy server, I've seen it take 8-9 seconds to get around to propagating role binding, which is annoying. But now we have to deal with that in a small way, at least with K8s not noticing role bindings for a finite period of time as well. So I was wondering if they could be combined in the same thing. Yeah, and then the service account thing. I mean, I can't remember what the details were for that not working.
Yeah, I remember that one. So the problem with that one is the service accounts, it starts competing with Kubernetes core like service account controller that's like provisioning secrets for the tokens for it. And those get a generated name. So you propagate ones that refer to secrets that don't exist or aren't valid for those namespaces. So the agency workaround was just, they have some hard-coded thing that ignores all service account propagation. Because there's no other way to solve that. So that's that one. The first one, that's a good point. I think that's good for us to consider that we could tweak our config for it better. But I think there's still some things that you can't get away with, or like it always has to watch every namespace, right? Like
no.
Oh, really?
There's a config option where you can limit it to a regex if you like. I think.
Well, does that limit what's registered with the Kubernetes API though? Because so one thing that happened to me was agency became unavailable, and then it basically prevented the deletion or creation of any namespace from then on until I was able to get it healthy again, even ones that were excluded.
It's definitely inside the webhook configuration, but yeah, anyway.
It's possible on my cluster that it was just also.
Well, the original challenge was that since our organ spaces were just named after GUIDs, we couldn't apply a single regex that would just restrict HNC scope down to our namespaces. Now we can, because everything's prefixed with either CF org or CF space, so we can say CF star.
Yeah.
And I think that's what we've done for 1.0.
Yes. Yeah. So the way it works is the webhook's got a namespace selector that matches labels that says HNC blah 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 included namespace, and then that's set from something else based on the regex in your configuration. So we can narrow. Yeah. So the namespaces can be narrowed down, but just don't change your prefix from CF dash.
See, yeah, my cluster was before we had done anything with that.
Yeah, but I think the main thing about HNC is it's that's the slowness of it when the system goes under load that we're having to wait 8 seconds. I think that's the real reason it needs to be replaced. So if we can do something better than that, or look at why it's being so slow. I really don't understand why it's being so slow. If you watch its logs, it does a lot of stuff. It wants to delete a lot of stuff all the time. Yeah, might just be our use case of bringing up a whole load of namespaces and deleting them in the tests.
My fear is that we end up being just as slow, just because there is something underlying that we're missing. I don't know.
Yeah.
Like, it's important that we ask ourselves, why do we think we can be more efficient than they are? Like, is it because our use case is more narrow and we can skip some stuff? Or are they doing things really badly? Or, what is the reason we could achieve much better performance? Maybe there's also a point in like PR, like if we just find their algorithm or their architecture is really bad. I mean, if it's a big problem, like an architectural problem, then no. But like if there is anything we can fix in HNC, it might even be worth.
The thing we were very keen on was knowing when a propagation had stopped, wasn't it? Like you could create a namespace and know that it's done. Except they don't even try to solve that. They just have a queue of things that need to be propagated. And when something gets created, it goes and adds stuff to the queue. And
Yeah, like if you implemented that, how would you do it? Because in the end,
it's impossible, I think. Like
it's a continuous process. Like it's not, you're never done. Like you're continuously watching the thing and propagate. So you can say, I'm done for now. So maybe it would be useful to have an indication of that the queue is empty. I don't even know if that's possible though with Kubernetes controllers. It would be like, I'm done for now.
So I just wonder if we can ever get rid of ugly hacks that are waiting for enough completeness that have to be outside of it. That's my worry for this sort of thing.
I have a feeling the answer to that is no, you can't truly get rid of them, but I think it would give more flexibility, like to knowing if something is almost there or like mostly there. But I think these are all like valuable things. Like Giuseppe, some of what you just said maybe would also be good as a comment on this. So like this Explorer is not like to just like go out and do it though, it's to make a proposal for some of this discussion. It's just to be informed when we make that proposal about what the pros and cons truly are.
Yeah, because I remember like with the EMEA team just talking about this many times when we were like initially implementing the first version of orgs and spaces and hitting all these problems. Yeah, I mean, maybe we can do better. I don't know.
I think we can't do better generically, but we might be able to do better
exactly
for what we're trying to solve.
That's the key. That's the key. Like maybe our narrow use case gives us some edge in some things.
Yep. That's definitely my feeling, is the first part you said, which is we have a lot more control over what we want to do in this narrow area. So I mean,
there's also the gain from losing a dependency. So it's like, okay, maybe, you know, even if it performs exactly in the same way, but like having this, I don't know, 50, 100, 200 lines of controller code for us is worth, if it replaces a whole dependency that we don't have to track for, you know, that we don't have to install, don't have to check for vulnerabilities, we don't have to check for compatibility with different versions of Kubernetes, all that kind of stuff. Yep. Maybe it's worth it anyway, you know.
Yeah. Yep. I think you kind of nailed it there. Is we can see potential benefits, but we can't say for certain those will materialize the way we want them to. So we want to kind of check it out and see what makes sense.
On the HNC side, I did see that there's a developer that's looking at performance on that as well. And I think his PRs were deferred to the 1.1 release. I don't know how much they'll help, but it was stuff like not using concrete, what do you call it? There's clients that have the concrete object, or there's more dynamic ones, and they're just trying to replace all the dynamic ones with ones that weren't, you know, doing stuff on the fly to make it a bit quicker.
Yeah, it'd be interesting to see what that does and what their schedule is. We might have a little bit of a race condition there, but it's probably worthwhile regardless, for the aforementioned benefits of not having an additional dependency if it works out. So I think the Explorer is still a pretty valid thing to do, just so we can inform ourselves. All righty. More thoughts on that? Cool. Looks like we have come to the end of our list of topics. Sure people noticed we had an additional person pop in, which is really cool. They want to get involved, they're going to ping Rob. So happy times. And I think with that, unless people have final comments, we'll break and I'll see you on Slack and elsewhere. Thanks for coming, everyone.
Thanks, everyone. Bye-bye.
Bye.
I
Right.